WA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Anomaly-NOW. This is Smiles Lewis reporting to you live. Well, I'm alive and I'm recording this live. It's not live when you're hearing or viewing this. This is the weekly news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka Anomaly Archives, based here in Austin, Texas. It is Wednesday, October 29th. We finally got some cool weather here in Austin, Texas, and we got a lot of news to cover. So I want to jump right in, but I also do want to alert folks. You know, we recently were having we just had our monthly Anomaly Academy lecture series with Expanding Frontiers Research Associates, Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer last week. That was a really great presentation about the early days of the UFO scene and the deep connections with espionage, government intelligence agencies, and personnel to the foundational UFO research, civilian UFO research groups back in the early days of the flying saucer UFO movement. And it was very fun. But we were also yesterday, we were going to have a special extra surprise presentation from our good friend Brad Abrahams talking, excuse me, about cinema of the unseen, close encounters of the humankind. And sadly, our good friend Brad has experienced a family emergency, and that had to be postponed, canceled. We don't know yet when that will be resumed. We're rescheduled, but yeah, you can find information about what that presentation was going to be about, and links to his amazing oeuvre of material, Love and Saucers, The Far Out World of David Huggins, over at loveandsaucers.com. His amazing documentary on the conspiracy artist David Dees. You've almost certainly, if you've ever come across something from the conspiracy community in the last 15, 20 years, seen one of David Dees' crazy, amazing, disturbing artworks that tries to illustrate some kind of beliefs about the UFO conspiracy, parapolitical, New World Order type of conspiracy stuff. Brad also has contributed great stuff to the QAA podcast. That's the QAnon Anonymous podcast, an anti-conspiracy, anti-QAnon conspiracy podcast. He did a series called The Spectral Voyager that's excellent, as well as a series called The Outer Dimensional Forces UFO Cult, and just a number of other great stuff dealing with the mystical, the esoteric, as well as the cryptozoological, Bigfoot, skunk apes, all that stuff. And you can find out more about that over at our website. And of course, you can go to our Flipboard. That's flipboard.com/anomaly archives /at anomaly archives. And you'll click through and get the links there. Thousands of articles, great stuff. We're going to cover a lot of those articles today, hopefully. And of course, we do encourage you to please check out our Patreon. That's patreon.com/anomaly archives. You can join for free, but anything you can contribute on a monthly basis would be greatly helpful in our goal and mission to get a physical location again. We have been sadly in storage since February 2021, even though we were founded back in 2003 and had up until 2020, the pandemic, 2021, coming out of the pandemic, had the best facility we'd ever had. But unfortunately, they were not renewing leases to the variety of nonprofits that were in that building. Anyway, over at patreon.com, you can find all kinds of content there. And like I said, you can donate $1, $2, $5, $10 or more a month. And it all helps us in our nonprofit mission and goals of preserving anomalous materials and educating the public about those materials. So the first thing we're going to cover tonight are some cool frontier archaeology news reports over at popularmechanics.com, of all places. Scientists found 6,000-year-old human remains. No other people share their DNA. If they have no ancestors or descendants, then who are they? This is by Elizabeth Rain from October 20th of this year. And the article starts by saying around 6,000 years ago, hunter gatherers who migrated south settled in the Bogota Altiplano of what is now Colombia, transitioning to an agricultural society over the next 4,000 years. Then they vanished. Whoever these people were, they disappeared from the genetic record. The team of researchers who discovered them through fragmented DNA in their skeletal remains have not been able to have not been able to find any ancient relatives or modern descendants. They are strangely not related to indigenous Colombians, having more of a connection to people who now live on the Isthmus of Panama and speak Chibchan languages. It could be possible that they spread through the region, mixing with local populations for so long that their genes were diluted, but no one can be sure. Again, this is over at popularmechanics.com. And of course, there's a lot more to read about this expose there. Very interesting. A lot of articles this show from the debrief.org. That's THEDEBRIEF.org, the debrief.org. That's of course, Micah Hanks's main news outlet for anomalous information. Lots of great articles by him and others like his co-founder, Tim McMillan. And this one, The Rise and Mysterious Fall of Cahokia. Researchers unearth new secrets of America's greatest lost ancient megacity. If you aren't aware, obviously, some of us in the American public education system did get the minimal education about the genocide against Native peoples here in North America that was perpetrated by the colonists, colonial explorers, expansion. But what often gets underplayed is just how widespread those civilizations were, the mass and scale of these cities, these networks. One of the other amazing thing is the massive amount of earth mounds that played a very significant part in the cultures of these native peoples. And one of our favorite researchers into that, Dr. Greg Little, is about to republish his compendium, his reference work on Native American mounds in North America. A fantastic resource for all those types of information. And the maps that show just the huge number of these mounds across North America is fascinating and worth your attention. Yeah, but meanwhile, Tim McMillan over at The Debrief has this article which starts, for centuries, the sprawling earth mounds of Cahokia have stood as silent remnants of a massive lost American city. Once the largest and most influential urban settlement north of Mexico, this pre-Columbian metropolis near modern-day St. Louis mysteriously flourished and then vanished hundreds of years before European colonists arrived. So in this case, something else was at play. Now, a team of researchers has uncovered new clues about Cahokia's rise and decline thanks to a single massive wooden monument that once towered over the landscape. In a study published in PLOS ONE, scientists from the University of Arizona and the University of Illinois used advanced tree ring data and isotope analysis to determine that a monumental wooden post known as the Mitchell log was cut around 1124 CE at the height of Cahokia's power. The analysis also revealed something unexpected and fascinating. The enormous bald cypress tree was not local. It had been transported at least 110 miles to the site, likely from southern Illinois or even farther south along the Mississippi River. Wow. This finding reshapes our understanding of Cahokia's reach and organization. The massive log, originally part of a towering 60-foot ceremonial post, offers a rare and significant timestamp for when the city's influence stretched across the Midwest and South. Quote, "The date, provenance, and context of the Mitchell log established a historical datum for the peak influence of the Cahokia polity." The researchers write, "It also prompts new questions about the long-distance transport of thousands of other such marker posts." Again, there's much more to read over there at thedebrief.org with this article, "The Rise and Mysterious Fall of Cahokia" by Tim McMillan. Hope you'll check that out. And then this one by Christopher Plain, also at The Debrief. This marks a paradigm shift. Study finds technological fingerprint proving first Americans arrived over 20,000 years ago. Christopher Plain writes, "Scientists conducting a new analysis of ancient Stone Age artifacts in the Americas and Asia believe they have found evidence that the first Americans traveled from East Asia along the coast over 20,000 years ago, and not via a defrosted quote unquote land bridge connecting the two continents several millennia later. The research team behind the potentially historic discovery believes their comparison of Paleolithic stone tools in America and Asia reveals a quote unquote technological fingerprint that points to a common ancestry between ancient Asian populations and the first Americans. Although some previous studies have argued for an earlier Upper Paleolithic American settlement, the University of Oregon team said their effort is the first to connect multiple global research sites to present a quote coherent model for the initial human occupants of the Americas, unquote. This marks a paradigm shift, said Lauren Davis, professor of anthropology at Oregon State University and one of the lead authors of the study, detailing the team's findings. Quote, for the first time, we can say the first Americans belong to a broader Paleolithic world, one that connects North America to Northeast Asia. Yeah. Again, more over at thedebrief.org. This next one is actually from nature.com and under their scientific reports section. Transients in the Palomar Observatory Sky Survey, POSSI or 1, may be associated with nuclear testing and reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena. This is one of multiple articles. We're migrating away from archaeology here. Sorry for the lack of a transition there. But this paper is by Stephen Bruhl, Bruehl, and Beatriz Villarroel, who you've probably heard a lot about, and her papers and open source research, where it's crowdsourced research, where they have combed through all these old astronomical photographic plates looking for sky transients as part of their UFO UAP research. The abstract for this article reads as follows. Transient star-like object of unknown origin have been identified in the first Palomar Observatory Sky Survey, POSS-1, conducted prior to the first artificial satellite. We tested speculative hypotheses that transients are related to nuclear weapons testing or unidentified anomalous phenomena reports. A dataset comprising daily data from November 19th, 1949 to April 28th, 1957 regarding identified transients, nuclear testing, and UAP reports was created. Results revealed significant associations between nuclear testing and observed transients, with transients 45% more likely on dates within plus or minus 1 day of nuclear testing. For days on which at least one transient was identified, significant associations were noted between total number of transients and total number of independent UAP reports per date. For every additional UAP reported on a given date, there was an 8.5% increase in number of transients identified. Small but significant associations between nuclear testing and number of UAP reports were also noted. Findings suggest associations beyond chance between occurrences of transients and both nuclear testing and UAP reports. These findings may help elucidate the nature of POSS-1 transients and strengthen empirical supports for the UAP phenomena. That's one of two or more papers from Beatriz, as well as this one, which you can read over at Stockholm University. Unexpected patterns in historical astronomical observations. Actually, I think this is an article about the paper and not the paper itself. It reads, researchers at Nordita at Stockholm University have analyzed flashes of light on astronomical plates from the early 1950s and found statistical connections between the times of these flashes. Yes, this is the paper we were just describing. Nuclear weapons tests and reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena. The results are presented in two studies published in scientific reports and publications of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. Now, I do want to at least acknowledge that we have also briefly reported on Professor Simon Holland's video that he did where he interviewed an expert historian on the earliest low orbit balloon surveillance technologies from way back that he and this historian researcher indicate could be at least a partial explanation for some of these glints, that these represent something that is perhaps terrestrial, human made, but little known by most people who just don't have that level of knowledge and history of humanity's earliest upper atmosphere, low Earth orbit adventures. But still, very, very interesting. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break here, but we'll be right back.
But I will stand firm in that I said in January, and I actually said it earlier, but it was, I think it was played in January, that there was something coming, that people were going to try to convince the public at large that there was a spacecraft slowly moving to Earth. And that didn't come out of thin air. That wasn't just something I made up before I sat down. That came from years of people trying to impose upon me something to use my mouth, that there was this threat coming, that there's a 1970s document that I believe to be classified for sure. And, I don't have the ability to get that out to people, but it postulated this. So there were so many warning signs that this was going to happen. I finally said the quiet part out loud. Intelligence agents from multiple agencies durationally over years would call me and slowly edge at me with this theory and this idea to try to get me to say it. All indications, all of them, is that lie is going to be that there is a craft slowly making its way to us here on Earth. And that is the lie they're going to want you to believe. It's nuanced, how they explain that, the nature of that threat. But that 100% is the lie you are going to be told.
All right. Yeah, so those clips are from episodes of Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Recent episodes highlighted by Patrick at Vetted, where he plays some of that Tubi season 2 of UFO Revolution or whatever the show is. It's Jeremy Corbell's main hosted, I think, UFO docu-series, where he basically made the warning, the prediction that there's all this chatter in the UFO background, the intelligence communities, trying to convince him and others that there is going to be an alien threat in the form of a detected alien craft heading towards Earth. And of course, 3i Atlas is getting a lot of attention in that regard. And, over at Vetted, the YouTube channel, is this titled video, Jeremy Corbell Comes Clean About 3i Atlas. And that's where those two clips were from. Of course, we've also played clips where Lou Elizondo, who also is often been accused of being one of the people pushing this idea, where his lawyer, Lou Elizondo's lawyer, went so far as, if I'm remembering correctly, to suggest that if there is anybody pushing this meme, this trope, this idea, it is Colonel Carl Nell, which is also very interesting because, as we reported in last week's show, at Danny Sheehan's Global Disclosure Day event, Colonel Carl Nell gave his reasons for why he believes that disclosure is dead. So, who do you believe? Well, anyway, this all gets to an idea that, of course, dovetails with an area of study that's long been of interest to me and others. This idea that for 100 plus years, there has been this idea promulgated often amongst quote unquote elites, world leaders, that how can we prevent the next world war? How can we prevent humans fighting other humans? And that is by unifying them behind a outside universal threat. Also, that phrase popularized by Ronald Reagan. But anyway, we'll provide the links to those video clips. But part of the other news articles that we wanted to say, there's so much junk out there right now regarding 3i Atlas. There's just so much AI slop and trash being generated. Thankfully, there are some more level-headed news outlets again, I'm going to cite lots of articles from The Debrief. TheDebrief.org's headline, Warning Network's Campaign to Target 3i Atlas Sparks Theories About Secret Planetary Defense Effort. And this is by Micah Hanks from October 23rd. Down in the article, it's actually their newsletter, their weekly newsletter, but in it he says, a new campaign to monitor 3i Atlas. This week, the International Asteroid Warning Network, IAWN, announced a new campaign that will target 3I Atlas, the unusual interstellar comet that was first detected in our solar system back in July. The campaign, which will begin in late November and run through January 27th, 2026, is focused on improving the collection of accurate astrometry of comets, according to an editorial notice issued in an electronic circular issued by the Minor Planet Center on October 21st, 2025. Using 3I Atlas as a target for a campaign to improve our data gathering about objects moving through our solar system makes a lot of sense, since the rare interstellar comet has dominated the attention of many astronomers in recent months. Additionally, the object displays unusual characteristics, raising significant new questions about the kinds of behaviors we can expect from comets and other objects that originate beyond our solar system. Unfortunately, the IAWN's most obvious reasons for wanting to monitor the movement of an interstellar visitor passing through our planetary neighborhood seem to have been overlooked by many news sites, which instead began airing speculations about the enactment of a new quote-unquote planetary defense initiative by NASA, feeding into the ongoing hype and misinformation that has surrounded 3I Atlas now for several weeks. A planetary defense initiative or just misinformation? Following the release of the IAWN's bulletin, several websites have reported that NASA is now involved in what some characterize as a planetary defense initiative involving the object, with others citing the activation of a new training drill related to 3I Atlas. What most of these sensational news reports fail to recognize, however, is that NASA had far less to do with the launch of the recent campaign than usual, and for a couple of reasons. Primarily, the IAWN is an international collaboration of organizations and astronomers that, according to its website, has been, quote, recommended by United Nations resolution, and whose combined efforts work to detect, monitor, and characterize potentially hazardous asteroids and near-Earth objects, NEOs. To be clear, that isn't to say that NASA doesn't play a significant role in ION's activities. Quote, NASA's involvement was essential to the formation of IAWN, reads an article at the space agency's website from January 2024. The article notes that NASA's current role involves, quote, coordinating IAWN, which includes convening the semi-annual meetings of the steering committee and signatories, as well as leading the periodic campaigns to exercise the astronomical and modeling capabilities of the worldwide network. However, it would have been difficult for NASA, of all agencies, to launch such a planetary defense initiative right now, given that the ongoing U.S. government shutdown halted the space agency's operations on October 1st, 2025. For several weeks now, NASA hasn't even updated its websites, and so reconciling its inactivity with the idea that it could have launched an international planetary defense effort amid the shutdown would indeed be problematic. Nonetheless, the current lapse of federal government funding highlights another significant concern related to 3I Atlas, one that more websites should focus on rather than misinformation: NASA's inopportune hiatus during one of the most significant space-related developments in recent memory. And there's more over there at the debrief. Right. Now, just jumping away from all the 3I Atlas hype and its loose connection to the UFO community, I want to go back to just some other science-related news, some astronomy-related news. Again, it's articles from the debrief.org. Astronomers just spotted an undiscovered space object hiding in the sun's glare, and it's moving extremely fast. This kind of just feeds into that, unfortunately. Hidden by the sun's powerful glare, a new space object has been discovered lurking in our solar system, and astronomers say it is one of the fastest moving objects of its kind. By the way, this is an article again by Micah Hanks. The speeding asteroid, dubbed 2025 SC79, was discovered in the region of space where the sun's blinding light makes such observations exceptionally difficult. Discovered by Carnegie Science astronomer Scott S. Shepard, SSS. 2025 SC79 completes its journey around the sun every 128 days, making it the second fastest asteroid known in our solar system. Yeah, more on this article and discovery over at thedebrief.org. Another interesting astronomy article there at the debrief. Astronomers use Earth-sized super telescope to spot mystery dark object too faint for conventional observatories to see. This one by Christopher Plain. An international research team has employed the combined powers of several observatories and gravitational lensing to create a super telescope sensitive enough to spot what the team termed a mystery dark object too faint for any single observatory to detect on its own. Led by Devin Powell at the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics, MPA, in Germany, the research team, rather than imaging the object directly, employed gravitational lensing, which uses the gravitational field of a massive object like a black hole or a star positioned between the observer and the object to magnify the targeted object's light like a lens in a telescope. Whoa. In this case, the team measured the gravitational lensing effects of the mystery object by observing how light from behind it was warped as it passed. And then this other article from ESA.int, that's the European Space Agency. Swarm reveals growing weak spot in Earth's magnetic field. Using 11 years of magnetic field measurements from the European Space Agency's Swarm satellite constellation, scientists have discovered that the weak region in Earth's magnetic field over the South Atlantic, known as the South Atlantic Anomaly, has expanded by an area nearly half the size of continental Europe since 2014. Earth's magnetic field is vital to life on our planet. It is a complex and dynamic force that protects us from cosmic radiation and charges particles from the sun. Protects us from cosmic radiation and charged particles from the sun. It is largely generated by a global ocean of molten, swirling liquid iron that makes up the outer core around 3,000 kilometers beneath our feet. Acting like a spinning conductor in a bicycle dynamo, it creates electrical currents, which in turn generate our continuously changing electromagnetic field. But in reality, the processes that generate the field are far more complex. Swarm, an Earth Explorer mission developed under ESA's Earth Observation Future EO program, comprises a constellation of 3 identical satellites that precisely measure the magnetic signals that stem from Earth's core, mantle, crust, and oceans, as well as from the ionosphere and magnetosphere. Thanks to this exceptional mission, scientists are gaining more insight into the different sources of magnetism to help understand how and why the magnetic field is weakening in some places and strengthening in others. The weak field South Atlantic anomaly was first identified southeast of South America back in the 19th century. And there's more, again, on this subject over at esa.int. Lastly, from this batch is another one from the debrief. New study warns planet cooling stratospheric aerosol injections are unpredictable, risky, could end in disaster. This is an issue we have covered multiple times. It is, of course, the source of many understandably paranoid and concerned conspiracy theories that there are efforts to seed the atmosphere through what are often referred to as chemtrails, or in the more scientific literature, some kind of aerosol dispersed material in jet fuel or various other theories. We've talked about this, and there's so much controversy about this, and the subject is so polluted by the conspiracy theories, which in my estimation have not been proven to have much basis in reality. But given the vast number of cases of governments, particularly the United States government, and performing experiments on its own people with various aerosol dispersal experiments, programs, it's understandable why people might be a little concerned. This article is by Tim McMillan, again, over the debrief. As the planet warms and political will to cut emissions lags, some scientists have shifted their attention toward the stratosphere as a last-ditch effort to cool planet Earth. A controversial proposal known as stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, involves dispersing reflective particles into the stratosphere to bounce sunlight back into space. In theory, it could mimic the cooling effect of major volcanic eruptions and rapidly offset global temperature rises. However, according to a new study published in Scientific Reports, the real-world challenges of making such a scheme work safely and effectively may be far greater than most previous models have assumed. Geoengineering proposals to mitigate the symptoms of climate change have received severe criticism from scientists in the past, who argue that such ideas serve only to distract from addressing the root causes of climate change. However, The Columbia researchers' new paper suggests that the difficulties of such approaches are woefully underestimated. The study by researchers from Columbia University finds that the technical, logistical, and economic constraints of stratospheric aerosol injection could dramatically narrow the window for what might be considered a low risk or even feasible deployment strategy. Quote, we find that the risk and design space for SAI may be considerably constrained by factors like supply chains and governance, researchers write. Logistical and technical considerations, most significantly difficulties in dispersing solid aerosols at scale in the desired size range, and the radiative properties of potentially formed aggregates introduce uncertainties in the outcomes of solid-based SAI strategies more so than sulfate. Yeah. Again, you can read more about this at thedebrief.org, but yeah, this is, I think, very concerning. I think there needs to be a lot more public debate about this, and it doesn't help that movies like The Matrix and other AI apocalypse films have included this idea that humanity thought that, well, in the Matrix movies, we used it to fight back against the AI uprising by blocking out the sun, which was how they were getting their solar recharge ability, if I remember correctly. And that backfired on us terribly. It's just a movie, don't worry. Skynet's not real. Oh, wait. There are several terrible programs called Skynet. All right. Well, that's going to be it for a moment here. Let me regroup and we'll be right back. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us and sticking with us for this Wednesday, October 29th, 2025 edition of Anomaly Now. I'm still your host, Smiles Lewis. Over at a Spanish language website, lacapital.com.ar, is this interesting article. Now, this is a translation using Google Translate, so apologies for any mistranslations here, but it's kind of a strange article here. Mystery in a Santa Fe town. A floating light disturbed the cattle, and the case was declared a matter of national security. It's got this obviously AI-generated image, and thankfully it does say image created with AI, of a purple-white orb with Tesla-like lightning emanating from it above a circle of cows with a cop nearby on his walkie-talkie and horses running around. A white light with violet flashes appeared over a field and disturbed the cattle. 2 months later, authorities classified the case as classified. This is from, again, October 16th, 2025, over at lacapital.com.ar. The translated article reads as follows: the night of August 14th in Candioti, a small farming town in the La Capital department of the province of Santa Fe, was tinged with mystery. What began as a neighborhood alert about strange lights ended with an official complaint, a police report, and now, 2 months later, a case file sealed for national security reasons. It all started just after 10 p.m. when the mayor, Sergio Orgioni, called this 22nd police station. Neighbors had seen something strange over a field north of the town, a white light with violet flashes that seemed to float a few meters above the ground. A deputy inspector went out to explore the area. Along the way, a livestock farm caretaker signaled to him in despair. He told him the animals were out of their minds. Upon arriving, the officer found himself in a scene difficult to explain. The cows were circling the light, as if hypnotized, while the horses ran wild, whinnying and crashing into the fences. The light, according to the official report, remained motionless for only a few minutes. Then it went out without a trace. The animals immediately calmed down and returned to the stable. There was no damage, there was no fire, nor any noise, just the confusion and silence of a night that, in Candioti, no one forgets. From the field to the classified file. The incident was recorded in a routine police report, but soon spread to neighbors and producers. The news reached researcher Andrea Perez Simondini, president of CEFORA, CEFORA, Argentine Commission for the Study of the UFO Phenomenon, and one of the national experts on the subject who decided to formally request access to the document. The request, filed with the provincial government under the Access to Information Law, was registered as file number 00101-0333-678-6. What happened next surprised even those who have been following these issues for years. Quote, the information cannot be provided because it falls within the exceptions provided for reasons of public and national security, the authorities responded. The notification, signed on October 14th, cited 3 laws, yada, 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 and all related to state security and intelligence. This is a striking case in which a phenomenon of this type is officially classified as confidential for national security reasons, between mystery and bureaucracy. Candiotti's case adds to a long list of rural sightings in north-central Santa Fe, lights turning on and off over fields, restless animals, repeated reports between Laguna Paiva, Nelson, and Recreo. But this time, there's something different, a sealed official document, an internal investigation, and a security classification. In Candiotti, while the file is sleeping under lock and key, the story of the white light that hypnotized the cows continues to spread from mouth to mouth. Okay. Was testing of some exotic weapon? Was it just ball lightning? Was it the true UFO phenomena? Whatever that is, who knows? Meanwhile, following up on our reporting about the recent release of a quote-unquote new interview with Jesse Marcel Sr. about the original Roswell crash. We say new because it's only been released recently by the National UFO Historical Records Center in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, by David Marler's nonprofit there, via Ryan Spriggs' Somewhere in the Skies podcast. Thank you all involved in getting that awesome new material out there. But over at A Different Perspective, that's the blog of Kevin Randall, which is at kevinrandall.blogspot.com. He's addressing this recent interview release, and it's a very lengthy article. There's even more photos of the debris field from his and others' investigation. Lots of interesting insights into this new interview. Much of it is Randall saying, yeah, see, this confirms what we've been saying all along. But he also does talk about the apparent miscommunication or misunderstanding, perhaps, by Marcel in part of the interview that gets kind of the timeline in Randall's estimation out of order. But you can go check that out. We'll, of course, provide the link in the show notes. Of course, the show notes for every episode of Anomaly Now are available over at our website, anomalyarchives.org, under the video section, and there is a different page for every show. So lastly, I'm going to leave us with a fun new thing. You know, when we had our good friend Adam Gorightly do a presentation for our patrons a couple of months back, he was, of course, showing photographs from the early days of the contactees. Great presentation of historical material. But he's been teasing me and others and with this secret project he's been working on. And it appears that there is going to be a Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks docuseries, or maybe it's a one-part documentary. And he's launched, or someone has launched, a Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks YouTube channel with a trailer for the new series or documentary. And among the information there is the description that reads, "Welcome to Saucer, Spooks, and Kooks, your portal into the shadowy crossroads of UFO phenomena, government intrigue, and fringe conspiracies. This forthcoming documentary dives headfirst into the bewildering narrative of unidentified aerial phenomena, dissecting how official agencies, misinformation campaigns, and the wild fringes of belief have shaped public perception over decades. Based on the book Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks, UFO Disinformation in the Age of Aquarius by Adam Gorightly, the documentary explores how disinformation and shadowy narratives become entwined with the UFO mythos and how that fog continues to cloud what we think we know." Indeed. Well, I'm going to end the show by playing this brief trailer for you. It's like anything connected to Adam Gorightly. It's fun. And I do really highly recommend his book, Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks. it is a very thin tone, but it is very informative and enlightening about that 1970s, 80s, and 1990s UFO era that is so much a part of the mythology that many of us grew up believing until we got a little more discerning. So, all right, well, check out that video and then we'll close out the show.
Roswell.
Alien bodies, multiple crashed alien spaceships, a government cover-up.
Dulce Base. It didn't matter what base it was all the battle of underground bases and the aliens are coming in and all this really out there fringe areas.
This is such a crazy ass story, my God.
Paul Benowitz was a scientist. He started noticing that there were lights doing strange things.
These things lit up like balls of bright light and just took off. Came up, went south around the end of the mountains, gone. Who are they?
Yep, it's got to be aliens. We don't know what else it could be. We're going like, wow.
They decided to just encourage him with the outlandish ideas. One, because the only people that would listen would be crazy UFO people and foreign agents.
Spooks or kooks.
We got Richard Doty apparently purposely misleading Benowitz and for whatever purposes, which could be counterintelligence to confuse Russians.
More, to me, he was completely sold on Benowitz. And Benowitz, at that point, had become the paranoid.
Man, it's like, what a gut punch. Everybody in that room, including Stan Friedman, had basically been played by Bill.
I guess these days it would be more like that New York Times article. It just comes out of nowhere and just bang. Somebody's making an effort to push it through in the way that people accept information.
And how they're using UFOs to potentially cover for an intelligence kind of gathering, psychological warfare. And it's such a great freaking cover story.
If someone like Paul Benowitz is already there, you just let them do the work.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Happy Halloween and stay safe. Probably won't be a show next week. I'll be traveling and visiting my mother. And, I'm just going to focus on that. Life, family. So we'll see you around probably in a couple weeks. Take care. Watch the skies.